Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of Beyond Technology and Innovation. In this episode, I had the privilege of speaking with Suren Gounder. Suren is the founder and CEO of Tango Eye. Tango Eye is a video analytics company. In this episode, we'll learn about how Suren moved from Wall Street as a financial analyst, moving back to India to start his company and eventually selling his company to Lenskart. This has been an exciting conversation, so let's dive into it. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of Beyond Technology and Innovation. I have a very exciting guest with me today. He is the founder of a company called Tango Eye. Is Suren Gounder. We have a special connection in terms of we have same seed investors or early investors in our company. That's how I met with Suren. And Tango has been recently acquired by Lenskart. So let's jump into it and learn more about his company, what he does. So Suren, for our audience, would like to love to know who you are, what you do. So if you can quickly introduce yourself.
Thanks, Rowan, and thanks for doing this. I think it's a great initiative, and wish you the best in this journey. So happy to be a part of the second episode here. So a little bit about myself. I'm Surin. I'm the founder and CEO of Tango Eye, and Tango Eye, for context, is a video AI company that has a retail AI product that is scaled over 50 plus brands, is the largest in terms of video analytics for offline stores. So we can think of Google Analytics for offline stores.
Great. So we'd love to learn a lot about your background, but tell me, how did you start the company? What problem did you observe? What made you look into this problem, and how did you start the company?
Yeah, so also to add a background context, Ron, I was in New York after college. So I was at Credit Suisse, an investment bank in New York. Um, it was about a 4 or 5 year journey when I quickly realized that there's a lot of innovation happening in technology, right? So I wanted to build. At that point, all I knew was I wanted to build an exciting analytics product that would, prove useful for a wide target audience, right? That's what I knew. And then one thing led to another, right? So I decided that the dollar went a long way in terms of technology development in India. So moved back to India and set up an initial core analytics team and started down the path. So we originally started as an analytics the services company. We did some services for uh, NPCI, which was a very at a very growing stage at that point because of demonetization, and they had just seen, I think, an 2-3x growth in a matter of months, right? So they were struggling to understand what was happening. So we built the entire analytics platform for UPI network. And in that process, I think that was a 2 year process, right? That's when, from 2018 to 2020, that's when I really took the time to think about what I want to do, and came upon Tango Eye, right? Like most consumers, I've been frustrated by my experience at stores. So wherever I went, and I always wondered, isn't there a way that, from a brand owner, isn't there a way that I can communicate to the brand owner, or the brand owner can understand the struggles of a consumer at an offline store, and surely they would want to change what's happening in these stores. So that's what really led or sparked a fire in trying to build a technology around this.
So if I have to describe you very in a very short sentence, you are using video analytics to provide intelligence to retail stores, and so they can increase their revenues, right? I mean, is that you would describe your business?
Right. So the business proposition is to first help brands understand what's happening in stores, why they're losing out on sales, and what are specific points that are causing that. Right. So that could be anything from lack of customer interaction to merchandise placed in wrong corners of the store.
Okay, great. Awesome. Um, so there is another similarity then between us. So we both used to work in the US and came back to India, started the company. So
Yeah.
so love to learn about your background. Where did you grow up? Where did you study? When did you move to US? And so if you can start from that.
Yeah, so I largely grew up outside of the US. I mean, sorry, outside of India. So largely in the United States. I went to high school and college in the United States, Boston, and around there. So I was there for about 7 years from just the college and schooling experience before I landed up on Wall Street. I took a year break to come back to India and explore how things were after college. And then I landed back on Wall Street doing equities trading for one of the largest investment banks out there. We were at that point we had, unfortunately the bank is no longer around. It's an UBS company today, but it was one of the largest trading outfits on Wall Street at that point. So it was a sort of a tough decision also to think about, okay, moving back to India,
Yeah,
right? And yeah,
because I mean, yeah, if you grew up
you
in the
did
US,
something similar.
but no, I grew up
Yeah,
in India. So for me,
yeah.
India is home. It's that's where I relate myself more than the US, right? But you said
Mm,
your
mm.
high schooling was in. So were you born in the US? Were you born in India or?
I was born in India, and then my family was doing, was in the US at some point, and then we went off to boarding school. So then it was just easier for us to finish schooling and college in the US. So we were sort of grew up in the US, and it's sort of a mishmash of US and Indian cultures at that point, I think.
Yeah, it's not easy for somebody who's grown up in the US, studied in the US, to come back to India and do the venture. So that what were the
Right.
challenges? I mean, when you came back to India, I mean, did you have any cultural issues or it was?
Yes, I think that was again one of the toughest decisions, and I clearly remember sitting there, thinking, okay, now if I want to do this, let's say I've got 100,000 or two, and I can collect another 150,000. So let's say I have 250,000 in seed capital through friends and family and personal investment. How will I build out a product, right? So, and then you quickly realize that sitting in the US and building it in the US, you're going to run out of money in maybe a couple of months, if not a year. And then it was a very obvious decision to say, okay, India is now, a very established tech giant in the world, where you have really good talent at an affordable price, where there's still a great price arbitrage, and also there's a lot of exciting things happening locally as well, right? A lot of startups at that point had become unicorns. I think it was right about when Paytm had captured on the demonetization wave, and they had a lot of momentum. Venture investing in India had matured, or at least started to mature. There was capital being allocated, so it was a good story. And I think it made sense to say, okay, if you're serious about what you're doing, you have to take a plunge. And I think that's something that we've seen. You and I have probably talked a lot of people who say, hey, I've got this idea, and it always remains an idea, right, in their mind. It never ends up being a company or a venture or a business. And I think that's when I realized, okay, if you really want to do it, you have to take the plunge.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, because I'm pretty sure you must have, as you said, you started with something and you probably ended up with something else, right? Towards the end of,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Yeah. So we started out, because I did, while on the trading desk in New York, I did a lot of our analytics tools. So I built, analysis on stock sentiments, trading sentiments, client performance, and that kind of, made me think I wanted to build a analytics product, right? But I didn't have much more information at that point, which in hindsight, I wish I'd thought a little bit more on it. But I think it still came back and started down that road, and struck up a services business, and then that kind of gave the seed and gave the platform to be able to build out a product. right? At that point, again, we were not looking at vision technology, but
Mhm.
it was very exciting because the introduction of a lot of the initial algorithms had come out. So there was a lot of research happening where you'd see guys in Stanford publishing stuff about yeah, the detection algorithms where you can now computers can know what they're seeing,
Mhm.
right? All the video inputs can today be recognized and all of that. So all of that excitement was coming in, and then I said, okay, let me think of that technology and also a problem statement that is wide enough where a target audience exists and who are willing to pay for it, right? So that's I think the fundamentals of starting a venture. So went around and spoke to a lot of people, right? We spoke to the likes of mall owners, we spoke to the likes of parking lot owners, we spoke to corporates that wanted to understand people coming into an office building. But I think what struck or what was consistent in problem statements was when I spoke to retailers. So that was the one group that consistently said the same problem across multiple brands. That's when I knew, okay, there's a product that can be built out there.
Yeah. So I think most, as many founders struggle is they have a, especially tech founders, they have a technology and they're trying to fit a technology into a
Into a
product.
solution, yeah,
So it looks like you went through that journey, but the most value probably came from when you started talking to customers and what problems they.
yeah.
So if you can, tell other founders about this process, how do you actually, what would you have done better, for example? Like what would have changed now that you have gone through the
Absolutely.
process? How would you
Yeah.
could you have done it better?
Yeah, I think in a way, going through the cycle and also exiting a company, you almost have like 2020 vision of what you could have done better, right? So I think there's a lot of things that come to mind, but I think I'll start from sort of building the product, right? So a lot of us are exciting engineers, or we are very passionate about the product. So what we think, we're going to have the coolest product in the world, and somebody is going to pay for it, right? That's usually the
Yeah. Yeah.
the startup mindset. And I think while I had that initial excitement, I was clear that we're not going to put resources to building it until it was uh, a product that could scale. We had enough people willing to buy it. So we actually went out and signed up a few, trial customers before we actually built the product. So a lot of people don't know that, we had initial anchor customers before
But
we really built
did
our product.
anybody advise that you should be doing that, or was it like, did you read some books, or how did you learn that's the
Yeah,
right?
I think that was just sort of maybe the conservative approach in me coming out and saying that, but it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't that I read up on how other founders did it and went about it. But I was just thinking, we have a good services business going on. If we are going to go down the road of a product company, typically the service business will secure a customer first before they start doing a lot of work, right? So I think that was the same
Mentality.
mindset. Yeah, so same mentality that came in.
Okay, great. Now let's switch gears and talk about funding. When did you actually raise your first round of capital? Um,
So
and
yeah.
how many rounds did you raise before an exit?
Yeah, so I mean that's an exciting process, I think, and I've heard your stories as well, and we've crossed paths in that realm, right? So initially, when I came back, I said, okay, this VC thing, this is how sort of lackluster and sort of dumbfounded I was, right? I was saying, okay, the VC space is growing. I've got an exciting product. Somebody will want to fund it, right? Or we're building something exciting. Somebody will want to fund it. But then, really, that's not the case, right? There is a lot more that goes into something like that, and that's what I quickly realized when I said, okay, we're doing analytics for NPCI. Will somebody fund us? And then that's not a venture fundable business, and that's what I realized very quickly. So and I think it was an early investor or someone that mentioned this to me. If you if you want to get funded, right? If you want to build a profitable business and get funded, you want to scale. The only guys that are going to back you in the very early stage are friends and family who don't know, you don't have any revenue, you don't have any traction, you don't have a product. You are probably going to waste time in approaching VCs because you write an email to every VC, pretty much an analyst will get on a call and speak to you, right? You know that. So while that's exciting, it's actually wrong information for early startups because the only guys that are going to back you without a product, without any revenue traction, are friends and family, and that's what I realized. So got an early set of friends from the banking space to invest in me, really, right, in the founder, and that's what happens. So we raised our first round. I think it was about 250K, which is what we raised in the early
Was
sort of
it like
friends and family round.
2018, 17? Which year was
Yeah,
this?
so this was about 2019,
2019.
2019. Yeah, 2019. And at that point, we didn't have a product. We had an idea saying, okay, this is Tango Eye, what we want to build. And we potentially had a couple of POCs running, right? And these were POCs at a individual store level, right? So then we said, okay, now we've got some capital, we've got friends and family. Now we need to build a product, right? And that's when you quickly realize the challenges, and Spintly is in a similar space where you're a IoT product. I don't know how you guys define yourself, but I see that we meet technology in the real world, right? So there are a lot of complications that come in from that. So when we built it in one store, thinking if a brand has hundreds of stores, how do you scale it, right? And that those challenges are really starting to dawn on us at that point. And I knew if we didn't have a story that said, "Hey, I can go out and scale this to hundreds of stores, thousands of stores," I don't have a venture fundable business, right? So that's when we spent a lot of time on the engineering side of things, where we said, okay, this is how our scaling will be. We will never go to a store to install our product. It will be a software only solution. It will have we spent and invested heavily in being able to remotely install, configure,
Mhm.
and sort of get up and running. And that's when we knew, okay, we've got a scalable, fundable business, right? And I think at that point we had signed on three early customers. So we were fortunate enough to have very large early customers. So for example, one of them was Lenskart. So Lenskart, Nika, and I think Sangeeta Mobile. So if you're from Bangalore, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So these three bands were early customers of ours that said, okay, you've got a product that's running maybe in 10 stores of their brands, right? So these are all brands that have hundreds of stores. So they said, you've got a product running in about 10 stores. And we were at an exciting stage again from a funding journey. So again, we were saying, okay, now we were speaking to credible venture investors. So who said, okay, you have potentially a venture investable product. And that's when we started down the institutional round of funding. And I want to spend a little bit more time on it. If you don't mind. So what happened then was we were we had the product, we had initial set of customers, we had even got a couple of term sheets, and we had signed a term sheet, and we knew we were going to
This was around
um,
2020, I'm guessing, right?
yeah, this was now around 2020, right? So where um, we had signed a term sheet, we had three customers signed on, we were going to do long form documentation, and then COVID hit, right? So that
Yeah.
was that was sort of eye-opening experience for a lot of founders, I'm guessing. Yeah, likewise for us.
Yeah. So, I mean, that must have been tough, right? So, I mean, did that funding round happen after COVID, or was that a challenging situation, and how did you deal with it?
So, I mean, now we know that a lot of funding happened during COVID, right? And at this point, we know that VCs were very aggressive during COVID, actually. But when the first day of lockdown, and I clearly remember this, right? I'd come home, and there was rumors about the lockdown. It was in the evening. There was I had already left the office, and we were working on legal documentation. And the I got a call from the analyst from the VC that said, there's rumors that there's going to be a lockdown, and we are still very excited, and we'll continue to pursue this, but we might, timings might get stretched out, or things might get delayed. We don't know how we're all looking at this, right? And as a founder, you're thinking there's so many unknowns, right? At this
Yeah.
point, you have a team, you have payroll, you have a product, you have customers, and you still have work to do. And the only thing that I could really think of at that point was to say, get in my car, go get my desk from my office and put it up in my home, right? And that's actually what I did. So I went and got my desk, and I knew I had to kind of continue working and figure this out.
Okay.
So yeah, and then to answer the question of did the funding happen? Funding did happen, but with a lot of twists and turns. So um,
Because
yeah,
we are
so
in physical spaces, right? You are dealing in
yeah,
physical spaces. We are dealing in physical spaces. We had a tough time when COVID hit because
yeah,
physical spaces were closed. There were no people, and so what do you do with?
exactly,
And your business also is to do with people moving within spaces, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah,
uh,
and
how did you?
specifically in retail,
Yeah,
right, which
absolutely. So,
was very much shut down, right, from an industry standpoint. And as a venture investor, most VCs want to see traction, want to see growth while
yep.
they're also investing, and that's sort of their proof in the pudding for them, right? So I think things slowed down, and that's actually when I realized possibly we are speaking to the wrong venture partner, right? And the person that actually told me this was Piyush, right? So we were at this point, so Piyush from Lenskart, right? So we were at this point in about, I think 10-20 stores at Lenskart. And then Lenskart being a eyewear provider, which comes under the healthcare category, was open, right? So Piyush said, we were on one of the calls when he said, hey, we need to scale the product because we really need to understand what's happening in our stores, because we don't have the ability for a lot of our managers to go down. We don't know what's happening. We need to see what's happening in our stores.
Mhm.
And we are quickly going to be opening most of our stores up. So the here was a customer that wanted to scale and is willing to pay us and continue to pay us. And at the same time, I was getting a lot of pushback from the venture community or the venture partner that I had signed up with. And then I just kind of ended up opening up to him as a founder to founder and saying, hey,
Mhm.
these are challenges I'm facing, because the long form discussions keep going on. Perhaps it's because of COVID, because they are also trying to figure out from a fund what they're doing in this time. And he said, listen, it's like a marriage, right? If you get wed to someone that you're not comfortable with, it's going to be a very, very
Mhm.
difficult journey, and everything that you try to do is going to you know become difficult. And that's I realized possibly you're talking to a wrong partner. While the deal may be exciting to you, it might make your life very miserable, and in that process you're not going to be able to achieve what you wanted to do, right? And I think a lot of founders don't realize this as well, right? So say, okay, I got a term sheet from a tier one VC. I got the valuation and the capital infusion that I expected. Now I'm good, right? But that's not all that
Mhm.
matters. There's a working relationship. There's you as a founder, you have a style of operating, whether it's how much information you share or how 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 much leverage you have in pivoting what you do in terms of operational day-to-day decisions. So these are things that I learned from Piyush, and when in those conversations. And Lenskart actually invested in us, right? So from an institutional rounds standpoint as well, and this is also was a founding stone to that.
So instead of that, investors who had given you the term sheet, you got a instead of them, you got an investment from Lenskart, or they also
Yeah,
joined.
so that's been pretty much what happened. So Lenskart said they would join the round, right? So they said, you've got a VC, let us come on the table and help sort of you scale. And also, I was talking to Piyush very openly about the challenges we were having. So he said, we'll come on. We don't want to take over the deal, but let them run the deal, and we'll participate. Right. And this is the time that Lenskart had set up their vision fund. So they had a Lenskart vision fund to invest in startups. So which then later scaled up as well. But what happened was, when I tried to stitch the deal together, the other venture investor was, he was, they were unfortunately not happy with having another investor on board, and that's when I quickly knew that, okay, if this is the scenario, then I'm always going to have challenges in the
Mhm.
following rounds to be able to convince this particular investor that, okay, this is a good idea, and it's going to make scaling Tango Eye a challenge for me. So, and we were fortunate that we had other institutions who were willing to join us at that point. So it was Lenskart plus another institution that was not the first venture investor. So Lenskart kind of took on the lead after that point, and then we had a couple other institutions join us. So
So,
that was the first sort of institutional round.
so if you were to advise a founder, like, I mean, it's just a tricky thing whether to take strategic investment or whether to take VC investment, right? So
Yeah,
you kind of then lay out your future, right? Like, okay, I'm going more strategic, right?
yeah.
Uh, how how does a founder decide? Okay, I would rather go strategic because I value the advice and it's a great fit, or I'll go the
Mhm.
VC route where nobody cares. I'll just build it
Yeah.
myself and go VC route.
No, that's a great question, because I think we've seen subtly in the background, we've seen few examples of startups take strategic investment money, and few that haven't, right? And I've that was a very very tough decision, because we got a lot of pushback from certain investors saying, hey, if you take strategic money, there will always be a shadow that says, okay, at some point, strategic will want to acquire you, which in our case, I guess, became true. But there's always that shadow, and you might not be able to, get tier one investors to come on board, and there might be challenges in that. But then there's also benefits in terms of scaling your product, uh, having a network that you can tap into and quickly establish, having access to sort of capital that is available, right? You don't have to necessarily, get uh, get sort of flustered by having to raise capital. There's pros and cons. So what someone, this again, a venture investor had told me is that it's almost like you're going to, you know, scale a mountain on a very very thin path, right? So on this side you could do well, on this side you might end up, doing poorly for your investors. And how you navigate that is really up to the founder, right? So it's not about taking strategic money or not taking strategic money. I think it's totally fine, but how you navigate is was more important, right? So and by that I mean, how you establish a relationship with the strategic, how what are the terms of you scaling up, what is the level of freedom that you have in building the product. So that's when I realized, okay, it's not necessarily a blanket decision to say don't take money from strategic or take money from strategic. It depends on the particular strategic and what their intentions are, right? And I think at that point, the comfort that I had with Piyush and the entire Lenskart team was played a big role, because he was the only guy that said, "Listen, don't worry about scaling the product. Take the COVID time, because COVID is was there still. Said take the COVID time, just build the tech, just focus on tech. When COVID is done and dusted and people are back to normal, you will be able to scale, ev- in a matter of months, right? So if you have all the products problems solved out, so said raise the capital, just focus on product.
You mentioned Piyush's name so many times, so I'll jump into that, right? I mean, we all know Piyush Bansal now from Shark Tank more than anything
Yeah.
else. because of the first season. uh, and you've been probably very lucky, I would say, to have a somebody behind you, like Piyush Bansal guiding. How was the experience? How did you, what did you learn from somebody like Piyush, and what's been your experience?
Yeah, I think first of all, I think knew from before the Shark Tank days, so we were fortunate, like you said, to have that mentorship and guidance from him. And it's been a relationship that has evolved as well. It's been something that we got advice in a timely, right manner. At the same time, I was able to see how he was solving problems at Lenskart and scaling. So there's so many benefits that came across to us over the period of years. And I think, apart from the individual advice that he had given us and as a company and as a founder, I think, the one thing that I probably observed from afar or from a close is that the level of, passion and vigor which he runs Lenskart with, right? So I think the passion to continue scaling it is just so much. Yeah.
Yeah, because we've been taking advice from folks, and you have to, you're building your own company, what's
Yeah.
the reality, what's the problem, right? How do you really take advice? You'll get 10 things as advice. How do you pick the right thing, right? I mean, it's not that straightforward. You
Yeah, I
can't just
think
follow what the
that's
other
that's
person
very
said.
like, yeah, that's, I mean, you get like, I think India is also positioned in a way where everybody wants to advise you about a startup, right? It's like, you are, you go home, your parents want to give you certain advice about the business. You go to work, people want to, every other founder has some advice, right? So I think end of the day, as a founder, you have to make your own decisions. I think that's what I learned, because the ground scenario the best, right? And you'll get the same advice from investors, right? Saying, you should be focusing on a particular customer or scaling the revenue or product. I think end of the day, take the advice and see what out of that makes the most sense. But end of the day, as a founder, you know what's happening in your business. You are the one that meets the ground, and I think you got to go with your gut at that point.
Yeah, yeah. So you have achieved what every founder wants to achieve. It's an exit. So first of all, congratulations for you to you and your team for achieving that milestone. How did this happen, right? What resulted in an exit, and how was the whole process of going through an exit?
Yeah, I think again one of the toughest decisions of my life. Fast forward the first institutional funding round, we raised a couple of rounds. Post that, we got some good. We had a very solid cap table. We had a good product. We had scaled from the initial set of customers to a bigger audience. And we were in the process of raising another round, right? So another round that meant, okay, now you scale internationally.
Mhm.
You establish a network of sales agents internationally. You look at brands beyond India. All of those were on our radar, and we had spoken to a few institutions. We had even looked at. We received a couple of term sheets, right? So we
Mhm.
had a couple of term sheets, and I think I was going down the process of figuring out who would be the right venture partner for us to scale the business and or help us be a part of this next journey of ours, right? So, and at the same time, I was also evaluating about what Tango was and what it meant for me. What should the investors look at? And are you building a unicorn? Or are you building a profitable business that someone will want to acquire? Or are you building a cool product with technology that has applications elsewhere? These are things that you have to evaluate at stages in the company, right? So to figure out what your value proposition is for people who partner with you. So again, at this point, I was caught up with Piyush in Mumbai at one of the events, and we were just, I think at this point he had become famous, so we were struggling to even have a conversation. So I had to go up to his room to continue the conversation and speak to him. So we were just chatting about this potential funding round, and he said, he has the same questions. What do you plan on doing? Is this going to be a unicorn? What do you have this kind of growth lined up to take this very aggressive capital that would require you to be on a very fast treadmill? And that's when I realized, like, I want to build a profitable business. I want to build a business that will have decent scale. I want to build something that is valuable in the retail community. But you know what? It may not be a unicorn that gets listed on
Mhm.
the stock market, right? Or it may not be, that that is not the path cut out for Tango Eye. And I think that understanding had to be.
Think it's also tricky, right? I mean, if you want, then when somebody asks you this question, it's like it seems like a trick question, right? Because they want to see, are you having a unicorn vision? And if you
Yeah,
come out like no, then you're worried that I may say the wrong things, right? Especially
exactly. Yeah.
with a potential investor.
Yeah. So most of us are trained to say, you know what, I've got this story that will take Tango Eye or take your company and put a cloak on it and say it's going to be Superman. It will do this, and this, and it can be a $10 billion business, right? And I think the challenging part here is to be able to convey the fact that it's not, and it's going to be a $50 million business or $100 million business, and it is going to be very profitable. It's going to have a lot of value for the investors in it. I think the conviction or the clarity in which you're able to articulate that is going to be super important, right? Because it's a fine line between saying you are not confident as a founder and saying you are confident as a founder, but this is my path and not the other, right? I think that's a very, very fine line. Yeah. And
Yeah, I think that's a great learning, I would say, from this conversation, that how do you uh, convey your vision, whether it's I mean, you don't always have to just say what the other person wants to hear, right? You just want to say what you feel like
exactly.
is the reality.
Yeah. And you know what, $100 million business, if someone handed it to you, I think very few people will say no, right? So
Yeah.
it's still a very, very lucrative outcome for a startup, but it's just not the $1 billion outcome that you are trained to sort of project out.
So with the Tango, right now you guys are present in India. You have customers outside of India globally. How is the growth plan? What's going on?
So we've now scaled outside. So we're in about 7 countries. We're in about 5,000, 6,000 stores. So which is again the largest sort of software video analytics solution that is out there in the number of installations that we have. We've also, in partnership with Lenskart, we have now done a lot more, right? So we do specific. We've made Lenskart store almost a superstore where there is analytics and insights from every eye test that happens in a store. So that eye tests are being performed with certain level of accuracy. That so we know that every customer that goes into a Lenskart store is getting the best and the right care that they deserve. We've also gone into the factory side where we've been able to help improve process and accuracy and sort of quality checks in that and their setup there. So I think the partnership has expanded and we've been able to take the technology and deliver it there. At the same time, we have, since the acquisition, we've actually grown 2x
Wow.
in terms of numbers as well. Um, so I think it's helped us in both ways because now we're talking to very large conglomerates that see us and say, okay, you're a very stable company today, right? Whereas earlier they looked at it as a startup.
Great. Yeah, so I think we have a few more minutes. So one question which I always ask and want to ask founders is, give me that one moment where you would have thought that I just want to give up, and then but you held on. Like, which was
Yeah.
that moment?
I think there's not just one moment, right? There's almost multiple moments that keep coming up, right? So I think it could have been COVID, it could have been you're gonna run out of funding. So the very early on when we didn't have institutional investors, so it was either bootstrapped or friends and family. We struggled to make payroll, right? Like most startups. So
Mhm.
at that point, my only mantra was I should have. A little bit of personal money that said, okay, I can make 1 month of payroll, right? So that was always a benchmark. But then it's a very small company. But yeah, so there are multiple instances I can think of. COVID and the unknowns that came from COVID being a real world product. That's a big moment. Then not being able to sort of not having the institutional funding at that point. That was another big moment. And I think it's easy to give up, right? The single most trait that a founder needs to have is just being able to the tenacity, right? To say, okay, I will continue, I will persevere, I will solve the problems, and I think that's the trait that most founders end up having, right? I think, and these are not just one moments that are going to come up; they're going to be multiple throughout the journey.
Yeah. Awesome. I mean, that's the mantra, right? I mean, we've probably shared so many conversations, and right through COVID, what we have learned is perseverance and patience is what is needed, right? And
Yeah.
you'll come out. Yeah. I mean, that's something which even we have learned. So I think one last advice, if you had to give founders other than patience and perseverance, what any other specific mantra if you can give to our founders?
Um, maybe this might change from time to time, but I think for now, what I've seen is a lot of founders are a lot of times on the back foot, right? Whether it's from an investor, they are saying, "Okay, I will do what the investor says," or from a customer point of view, somebody's asking for something that they don't have, and they're trying to figure that out for them. I think it's important for founders to have a level of clarity and to be not arrogant and aggressive, but to be aggressive in knowing what you know, right? Being confident about what you know, and whether it's an investor or a customer or anybody else, right, for that matter, to say, I'm building this and this is my vision and this is the value that I'll be able to drive for you. Please join me, rather than trying to cater that vision for that investor, or whether it's a customer that's saying, hey, can you do this for me, that for me, and we try to pivot the product towards that. Sometimes it's good, but that has to be a conscious decision from the founder who says, okay, this is the market that I'm going to address, this is how big it is, I'm confident on that, and I will stick to that path, right? And I think that's super important to have that clarity, because it's not going to be all roses from day one, right? You're going to, even when you choose that path, you have to persevere, you have to keep doing it, like you said, and then you get to the outcome that you're looking for. But that clarity and that confidence in your thought process is very, very I think important.
Great. Well, thanks, Suren. It was really a great conversation. I learned a lot more about you. We have had met many times before, but I don't think we had such a open conversation to learn more about what you've been able to achieve and how was your journey. So really thankful to you for your time today, and I would like to wish you all the best for
Thank
your
you.
journey
Yeah.
ahead at Tango Eye, at Lenskart, and whatever is in store for you in the future.
Thanks, Rohan. I think I want to say thanks for you to taking this initiative to do this, because I think this is exciting and really sheds light on a lot of founder journeys and what people have done. And I'm sure you'll have a lot of insights and powerful insights that you are going to implement and in your
You'll
journey. So
you'll probably get a call from me soon because
sounds good. Sounds
yeah,
good. Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm anytime there to help. Sure.
Thanks, Suren.
Thanks, Rohan. Take care. Take care. Bye.